Hello and welcome to etcfo.com. And in our special series, Breakfast with CFO, we have with us TK Sridhar, who's the CFO of an engineering and infra services and industrial technologies firm, ABB India. So, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Artika, and very good morning to you guys.
Good morning, sir. So, we have a lot to ask you on this interview, on how CFOs are managing, in uncertain times, especially given the inflation, is on a decade high. And, how are, you as a CFO looking at risk management, post-COVID? But before we do that, and before we explore all those questions, in this Breakfast with CFOs episode, we would like to understand that how do you start your day? Is there any mantra you follow that gets you going and energizes you for the rest of your busy day?
Thank you, Artika, for asking this particular question. I think it's very important in today's time that, as everyone says, a healthy mind and body is very important for us to navigate through these uncertain times, right? So, as a person, so I have definitely a time which is carved out for myself to energize myself for the balanced days of activities, right? So, my morning starts with is a mix of activities which spreads over the week. So I practice yoga, then I go for cycling or I go for badminton. So this is basically the activities which is very important for me in the mornings to keep myself energized. So that this 1 hour or 2 hours in a day really gives me that right amount of energy to focus on the activities.
Post COVID, how do you see this enterprise risk management has evolved? And to add another question to it, how has it evolved? And another one is, are you satisfied with your ERM?
I think it's an thanks for this question. This is a very important element, right? So because let me give an answer to this question in two dimensions. Okay, one, what is basically seen within the organization, how you run this ERM and how satisfied you are. Other topic which I would like to give and sort of a view is how externally organizations are gearing up to this and how it forms part or integral part of the governance model of any organization, right? So internally, how do we run ERM? It's absolutely a bottom-up approach, right? So ERM today, as a multinational organization, we have good exposure and we have been practicing it for at least now for the last a decade, I could say, because I've been in this company for long, right? And it has gained a lot of maturity in this particular journey. So every business this is probably the time when we'll start our ERM exercise now because we run Jan to March, December as our financial year. So we look at risk starting from now for the next year. So we reassess where we started from, how we are today, and looking going forward, how do we see this? So every business carries on this ERM exercise, right? And you have two dimensions of this because our being a multinational organization, these businesses report into global organizations, right? And we as a country also has a geographical dimension as that. So when these ERMs are consolidated and we get it up to that a level of a country, you get a good dimension of what are the risks which we need to manage, right? So typically you have a risk register, you have what's the impact of this particular risk, and then you select which are those top 10 risks which you need to manage, right? So that's something which is what happens, and this happens at every business level, right? And even globally, it's important they need to understand this risk profiling in various geographies as the same businesses. So then, why that is required? Because if there is a technology risk for an example, so this technology risk cannot be supported by the country. It will be by the business, the global business, which will give the technology support to help that particular business to manage it. And when it comes to people-related risk or a governance risk or an inflationary topic as what we discussed as to how to manage it, that's something what a country will support. So it is very important to get these two dimensions for any businesses so that the framework remains stable for them to run the business. Now, coming to this, we do every year, and this is pretty much very consistent for the last a decade. And I believe in this exercise, and this is a very important topic for the CFOs, because adjacent to it, the internal control framework also is designed to manage these particular risks. Right? It cannot be, it's just an exercise to tick the box, but it has to be pervasive to go into other parts of the operations as well. That's how we stitch this particular topic in other elements of operation. And then coming to the governance part of it, I think in today's world of how governance is run in listed companies, risk management committee is one of the most important key elements of how the company looks at risks, right? And in the recent past, if you remember, earlier risk management committee used to be once in a year, but today we are talking of twice in a year, that independent directors have to be appraised about these particular risk portfolio of the company, right? So, and the audit committee chair is the definitely the chair of this particular committee as well. So therefore, it has a focus externally into the organization, because we get the wealth of knowledge what the independent directors have into the company to manage this particular risk, to know and also to manage this risk. So in other words, I think, and for that topic to manage, ERM is the sort of a material which we use. So in a nutshell, I think risk is definitely there for any organization. The key is how do you manage, how do you identify and manage this risk? And there are various people who support to manage this risk as well.
So I think interesting where you pointed out that it's a bottom-up approach that you said that ABB takes, and also that ERM now happen, at the governance level, twice a meeting happens in a year for that. But I think you missed out one question, is that are you satisfied with your ERM? And if you have to change something, what would it be?
As a CFO for an organization, so I'm really satisfied with this exercise, because I think the evolution of risk over the period of times has been changing. If we had to look at it previously, probably we would have kept safety as an important risk, people safety. But today we don't have that as a safety as a risk, because with the actions what we have taken within the organization, it is become a DNA of the organization to manage it. Similarly, with integrity as a topic. But today we're looking at how the market risks are moving. How do we be relevant in the market? So that's why, because the technology is changing so fast, right? I mean, it's very important as a digital organization, the our awareness of these technologies and adapting those technologies in our offerings with the customer connect what we have is pretty much very important for us, right? So, in a nutshell, I think to answer your question, am I satisfied? Answer to that is pretty much yes. Okay. And now, what changes would you like to do to this thing? Is because I think the level of understanding of this particular ERM as an exercise differs from at each business organization level, right? So it is very important to educate the people about this particular topic as to how they can use it as a tool for managing their business. Depends on the maturity of the people or in that particular running that particular businesses, right? So it's very important that we as CFOs act as enablers for them, because I think the perception of risk could be different at different levels. For a business to run successfully, they should not only look at transactional risk, but they should also importantly look at strategic risk as well, because that's what paves way for an longer term of business existence, right? So we believe that as CFOs, is important for us to run trainings for them more intensively, educating them and sort of graduating them to those particular levels. So, if you ask me a question, what do you like to change? I would like to actually make more trainings for these people to understand the whole gamut of how to manage the risk, and probably that could also help them and support them.
We would like to understand that we know that there's a ABB results of Q2 has recently come in, and you've shown like the PAT is 100% up, and the growth also seems very good, the growth percent. The order book is 64% up as compared to the previous same time. But we would like to understand here that where do you see the most demand coming from?
I think we repeatedly say something when we look at our analyst call as well. I think the construct of ABB today as to how we approach the market in India has changed over a period of time, and this is not something what we have discovered today as a thing, but it is a result of the seeds which have been sown for the last 3 to 4 years. Right. Earlier, if you look at ABB, ABB would be more seen in the core sectors, but today we look at when we look at our market, we look at them in 23 market segments, right? So and in these market segments today are bifurcated into one which are fast growing, and one which are basically which will grow at a double digit rate in the next years to come, and then which the other one is more about how is the base market which is working on, which are more 7 to 8% growth levels, right? So our strategy has been to diversify ourselves into these particular market segments rather than just focus on the base market segments, so that you get access to those customers and the market opportunities in the other segments as well, right? To quote an example, data centers. Data centers is will be probably the fastest growing market segment going forward. So our offerings are now getting more tuned, and our customers are getting more connected. I mean, our sales guys are getting more connected to the customers in this particular segment, right? And so we see that there is an uptick in the data center market, in the market for us, right? And similarly, when you look at food and beverage, probably 5 years before, we were not looking at food beverage as an viable or as a very consistent market. But today, quite a few of our offerings are in the food and beverage market, even starting from the smallest of the switches to the most technologically advanced robots is what we offer to our food and beverage as well as the pharma sector. So I think our strategy to grow and look at other market segments has been one of the key enabler for us to sustain this growth momentum. And you would see even during the COVID time, we were not very off from the targets what we had already committed, right? So that's number one. And number two, I think, to be honest, we definitely have to look at a relative way, because last quarter was definitely a COVID impacted quarter where we had one of the months totally run down because of the COVID, and this quarter is strong, right? So, but we as an organization internally definitely make sure that it is a normalized view. That means we look at how sequentially also we have grown, right? So sequentially also, if you see, the growth has been pretty robust. We had 21% of growth in orders and 4% on the revenues. So overall, I think we are satisfied with what we have done so far, right? And if you're looking at what's the position of ABB in the going forward in the markets, I think we we remain steady and grow as the market grows, right? And I connect again back to the first question as to how we manage risk. So I think we need to understand the market dynamics and start to manage the risk as well, right? So we are prepared for while we participate in the environment and grow as the market is developing. We also are aware what sort of risk could come up, and so how do we manage it, right? So that's why we say that we don't. We would not like to say the market is growing at 10, 12% or 15%. I would like to grow also at 15%. We see at today's environment, it's more. I would like to take a more short-term view so that we get a more stability in what we deliver. So when we make sure that we are participating in all opportunities that is available for ABB in the market space, so that we have an reasonable order inflows for us on a quarter-to-quarter basis.
Right. So we understand that F&B is one where you see the demand is upcoming and increasing. But what are the industries that you see? Where do you see most demand coming from?
I think if I want to look at these particular, what are the segments which give an huge growth potential, right? So let me answer that question. I think electronics, data centers, and warehouse logistics. These are the segments which will grow the fastest. Okay, so when I say fastest, they are talking of upwards of 15% growth on an annualized basis, right? And that's more because we see so much of investments coming in that particular sectors, market segments. Then, if you bifurcate, go one level below, right? So the renewables, the railways, your food and beverages, what I was mentioning, water, pharma, and automotives, right? This is the next segment which will basically probably post a double digit growth, right? So and then comes the base sector, which is steel, cement, buildings, infra, right? And the what do you call, marine and ports, pulp and paper. They will definitely grow, but not at the pace at which the other market segments are growing, right? So but now we are talking of probably 7-8% growth is what we see over there.
All right. So, one question that we would like to explore here is that, how do you see your customer behavior changing post COVID and evolving in the future?
Okay. I think the first thing is that I would not say post COVID, but I would really mean to say as to how the customer behavior is changing, right, over a period of time, right? The
Or,
COVID was an instance because it's an abnormality, and I would not like to say that customers behaving differently because that. I
all
think the
right.
first thing is that there is a shift because most of our common businesses is coming from the OEMs and the distributors and channel partners for us because we are a product oriented organization at this point of time, right? And you have the projects which are coming from the steel or the cement or the oil and gas majors, right? So that's how the construct is. When I look at the market which is served by the flow businesses, what we call as the product businesses, I think there is a shift in the generations, right? The people who are running the businesses today have passed on the baton to their next generations and who are younger, and so they definitely want a digital interface when it comes with them. Number one, and number two is that because the market is also the business environment also is looking at data, looking at technology adaptations. So I think our both customers as well as the teams are getting more and more educated on the digital transformation which is happening, right? So and our solutions also need to be upgraded consistently to adapt to be in line with what the environment is changing, how the environment is changing. So I think this is a second set of a transformation which is happening, right? So now coming to this is the marketplace. Now coming to how do as a CFO see that sort of impacting my area of operation, right? The first thing is today the number of checks which I receive as payments from my customers is probably less than 1 to 2%, right? So all are digital payments, right? So that means the amount of controls what I need to have on account of managing the checks is something which has reduced drastically, and it has improved the overall economic scenario. And number two is that today the transactions which used to be done by several hands is now done by robotic processes, which does the automation in a more efficient way. So then those skill sets are being applied or upgraded to handle a bit more mature processes as such, right? So that's an important transformation which has happened and which will continue to happen, right? And last but not the least, I think ABB, as an ABB, we are always a forward-looking organization to say so. So we deploy technologies which help the processes to be faster, transparent, and also the information flow between various partners happen in a very speedier manner, right? So we definitely upgrading ourselves in terms of technologies what we are using for running our processes. So that way I think we have to stay relevant. It's important that we need to upgrade ourselves. So my take on this is that while the business environment is changing, right? And there is more digital adaptation which is happening externally. The same amount, or rather 2x of it, has to happen internally so that we're able to serve them better.
ABB recently, claimed that it has also started aligning its agenda to the global counterparts. What I wanted to explore with you here is that, what is the cost of following the ESG path? Because when you look at it, you are basically for example, you have green initiative for your infrastructure, for your building as well. Just an example. But when you talk about using renewable energy, there's a cost to it. It's more than what normally your resources would cost. So this is just an example, a very small one. But overall, when you look at it, is there a cost of ESG that you have to pay?
I mean, this is a very provocative question, to be honest. Okay, right. So I'm a very firm believer that ESG is a key differentiator for companies like us in terms of how we make our customer more delighted, not only in his cost savings or a productivity, but also making sure that he is able to achieve his ESG agenda. Right. So that's the first part. And when we look at ABB journey on the ESG, I think while we have adapted the 10 principles of what we want to do it, but I think for easy understanding, we talk of three buckets. One is basically the green buildings, what we are doing it, and the green factories, what we are working on it. Another one is the green products, right? So our activities are centered around these three buckets. So the first one about green buildings is that wherever we are today occupying, we are making sure it has all the elements that could probably certify it under LEEDs, under the certification which says that you conserve energy, water, and the other elements to that. So that's our paramount first thing, and that is in our control, right? So if you look at the corporate office where we are, or other factories, which is Nelamangala or Nashik or Baroda for that matter, we're all very much aware that this is important for us, and we work towards a certification, right? All of the factories are minimum gold, right? Some factories are platinum as well, so we are proud to be so, right? So then other comes to the green factory. So it's here where you have the operations which are more energy conservatively organized, right? Where we have less of waste which is generated, right? And we have zero fill to land, and also we have a water positivity which we maintain as well. So this is the second topic which we are dealing with. And the last comes about the green products, right? So here it's a bit complex, right? So because it means you need to have engagement with the suppliers about how you have your products also doing, following these equipment, following these elements, right? So now to answer to your question, to give you some examples, right? So when we came into this particular building from our earlier office, which was in World Trade Center, into our own factory premises, we first of all, we moved into a building which was basically a repurposed building. This building could have already been in normal situation, it could have been a landfill. We first made that this is not a landfill. So that means we repurposed, including our salespeople, the management teams work out of this particular place. And we have put the state of art facility for all of us. And also we have equipped it with the most from cutting edge technology of the building management system. So this has the ability, which has the ability to actually conserve energy. Give absolutely good data about how you maintain your air conditioning, how you consume water, a lot of stuff. So now, how much did I spend? With that, I'll not probably tell you, but I could tell you the payback is just 2.5 years for me, right? And this is just an example. And also, we run a lot of projects on renewable energies, and then on the water positivity and rainwater harvesting, right? I mean, if you look at it as a cost, then we always be worried about the cost. But our frame of mind is look at it as an investment, right? Which will actually help the organization and the customers. Then then comes the payback period for it, which is more meaningful, right? So I think it's an mindset change which we need to apply to ESG as a topic, right? So there are two schools of thought. I don't say that I am the right guy. One school of thought is it cost prohibitive? Other one is whether it is cost, accretive to the margins. I believe the first one, that this is important for us to be relevant in the years to come to the markets, right? And so when the transition is happening to these particular topics, it's better that we adapt this and go forward, right? And the returns, what we feel on the investments, what we do to become to follow these principles is quite minimal, but the returns are far-reaching.
There's a turbocharger business that the board, ABB board, just on August 9 decided, and they gave approval for liquidating the equity for it. So I just want to understand that how much equity is ABB liquidating, and what is happening in that turbocharger business, and why has this decision been taken?
Okay, so first of all, let me give you a rationale as to what turbocharger is, because I think globally, I think the study says that turbocharger business is actually more mechanical and more applicable for industries, right, which are more, it's more fossil fuel based industries, right? For example, if you look at India per se, I think one of the major industries to whom we were supplying was Indian Railways. Right? So the Indian Railways is sort of transiting from an diesel locomotives to an electrification of locomotives. So then the possibility of applying these turbo generator sets could be, pretty much less on the going forward. So that means there'll be different business models what these businesses will have to create in the future. So, like any growing organization, right? There is a topic called portfolio management, right? So when you look at the portfolios of any organization, or thing. So when ABB thought that this particular business could be well run in case if it is run separately, rather than having it as an ABB portfolio as such, right? And as an offshoot of that particular decision, the turbocharger as a divestment of an topic came up, and that was applicable for all the geographies what we have, and so it was applicable for India as well. So rightly, right? So I think coming to next question of what is the equity and what is there. I think this business, but if you look at the earlier press release, it was at 315 crores, and it is so much as equity as such, and that's what will be sort of sold. So, and that's how the board has approved. But I think it's more important to understand the equity. How was the process basically run? I think it's the board which decides, because it is an related party transaction as such between the group and the state. And as per today, it's independent directors who have to decide. And so that's how, and we as a management represent it to them. And then it is a well-governed process that way.
All right. And what is ABB's growth outlook for FY23 or CY of this CY?
So we have been growing at 20, almost a double-digit growth if you look at it, right? So let me give you an answer in a different way, right? So what we are looking at is, if I take 2018 as the base year, right, and remove those businesses which we divested, and start to calculate over the period of next the last 3 to 4 years, how have we grown, right? So we have growing at almost 9 to 10% on a CAGR basis, right? And the first thing is I want to maintain this particular momentum.
Okay.
That's pretty much important, because and that's is something which is above the first of all above the nominal GDP rates as well, right? And that has to happen. And next is about the presence of ourselves into those opportunities which the market is offering to us. That's important, as what we discussed a few minutes ago, right? And I think with this, I think we should be playing with the market as it grows, definitely, right? But at the same time, we are preparing ourselves to understand what are the risks which should also come out from these new sort of market segments as well as the economics which is playing out. So we are preparing for the both of them, right? So on an so that's why we said, right, for an on a profitability basis, we want to make sure that we deliver 10% as PBT on as a credible organization for the next couple of years to 3 years, and then look at how do we do it. And this will come from various factors. One, of course, your internal economies, which will play out, plus your market segments where you are in.
So now this brings us towards the end of our episode today, and we can't leave you without asking this question. That as a CFO, what keeps you awake at night?
I think what keeps me awake today is a transformation topics. Today, it's very important for all of us, especially the CFOs, as to how to handle transformations and portfolio managements as the business models are changing, and also how to basically reskill your people and adapt these transformations as they are unveiling. Right? I think the concept of managing the risk, the cash, and everything is now becoming more routine. And what is emerging is the transformation topics, and also how do you have play a role in these portfolio management topics which are panning out.
All right. So thank you so much for coming to our show today, and thank you so much for being part of Breakfast with CFO series.
Thank you, Atika. Nice talking to you early morning.
It's always a pleasure for us, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.